Hello, folks. Thank you very much for tuning in to our September live stream. We do like to have guests on and talk to us about the stuff they're doing, but oftentimes the three of us are getting into trouble, and we like to talk about that sort of thing as well. And this time around, we never really got a chance to debrief on our respective field day experiences, and this will give us a chance to do that. In addition to that, there were some things going on in the summer that all of us were that all of us were engaged in, and that would include people who are watching the stream, viewers like you. So, please, if you want to give us a little bit of a heads up about A, how your field day went, B, what you did this summer, what was really cool. Was there a new piece of gear you tried out, a new antenna that worked really well, or conversely, anything that didn't work well? I'm going to be watching the comments like a hawk, and we'll be bringing those up. So if you do put a comment forward, we may come back to you with a question. So please get involved that way. Now, what I like to do at the beginning of these streams is just bring in my colleagues. So Chris of Kilo 2 Charlie Juliet Bravo Radio YouTube channel. Hey, Chris, over in Connecticut, what's been happening in your world?
Well, yeah, we're well. I'll get into it when we go through some of the stuff we did over the summer, because it's all I'm going to tell everybody. The tease what I'm going to talk about is it's all Tracy's fault. That's all I'm going to say. But I do want to say, before we go any further, anyone watching the live stream, is a hearty thank you. I'm looking at my little YouTube channel, which is now at 4,395 subs. So I thank every one of them, and it really is it's really encouraging.
You can monetize at that point, can't you?
Oh yeah. I mean, and look, I still have to have a job. There's no retiring on YouTube, that's for sure. But anyway, so I just want to put that thank you out to everybody. But we'll get into how my life has been affected by VE3 TWM, and basically I think he's ruined it.
There you go. Okay. Hey, Tim, over in Illinois, what's going on in N9 SAB land?
I can commiserate with Chris. I know that VE3 TWM guy.
Yeah.
What are we gonna do? I don't know.
A home wrecker.
Come on, you never get out of your basement. You're too busy building antennas.
It's true. It's true. In fact, I was reading an article the other day about the effect of sunshine on long-term health and all that stuff, and it's like, I haven't been out all summer. This is crazy. And now, if I want to go outside, it's raining and cloudy.
This is true.
Well, you know what? Some of that vitamin D is actually coming through those clouds, and liquid sunshine. It's all how you choose to view it. That's powered me through some of my rainy trips.
I've had to start taking it.
Yeah,
the supplement.
No, it's certainly a good thing to take.
Okay, other than that, everything's fine. Lots of fun stuff going on.
Hey, any new antenna designs you're working on or shipping or anything else?
See, we've got okay, so I make the little OCF, the mini OCF, which is a QRP antenna, right? And one of the things I've always wanted to do is make a 100-watt version of that with some larger toroids. So there was there's a lot of going back and forth, because a lot of people like the FT140. This is a two core design, right? So the FT140 43s, I think a lot of people those use. When you put them side by side and try to do them in that design, it's just too big. It's just too big and clunky. So I found the toroids that I like, that are big enough to still be a 100-watt antenna and yet make it sizable, so to speak. So I've got that. There's the 100-watt version of the mini window, which I gave that to Philip, actually, and let him play around with it, and he did, and it works. So that's cool. So our Tech Pepper friend and I were talking about doing a linked end fed for work bands, right? So it's the 12, 17, 30 in end fed halfway with a flat dark earth colored enclosure. So we're doing that. He's actually, I think he started either today or tomorrow taking a look at those. And then I've gone to linked end feds too, 2040, which seems to do pretty well. They're a lot easier to deploy than the regular ones. And I got some stuff for Julian too. We're gonna do some work around just regular monoband dipoles and chokes. So there's the regular choke that I have, but I want a VHF choke, right? I want to do what I really want to do is like a 2 meter, 6 meter, 10 meter link dipole. So there's a fella, his name is Rob. I can't remember his call sign right off the top of my head, but he was talking about doing 2, 6, and 10 for a link dipole for like VHF work for soda. He's a big soda guy. Yeah, so that would be fun too. But I wanted to put a choke on it, so I need a choke that goes from 10 meters up to 2. I think I have it actually. I think I've got. Yeah. So it looks something like that.
Oh yeah! Wow.
Nice.
So I'm working on the mix at the moment. I've got the size I want, but whether it's a 43, a 61, 57, 75, whatever. So that's all that's going on here.
Very cool. Okay, good stuff, Tim. And I forgot to mention, and to my shame, look up N9SAB antennas on eBay. That is Tim's antenna store. I have been using Tim's products for years, and they're extremely well built. They work really well in the field. Big fan of them over here. And
you can't
Tim,
kill.
yeah, absolutely right. And Tim's a good guy to boot. So there you go.
Yeah,
okay, listen. Sorry, go ahead, Tim.
So I just noticed, we're up against Thursday Night Football tonight, right?
Yeah, it's the Giants. It's the Giants 49ers. So
that's our two biggest markets.
My team doesn't play until Saturday, so this was right off my.
No, we mean football, not soccer.
No. I'm not. I'm talking about the original football. You do know it was the Canadians that introduced football, American football, to the Americans. Right?
Leather helmets too, as I understand. So yeah, good luck with that.
And they still wear leather helmets in Canada.
You give us Doug Flutie too.
Yeah,
right. the goat. He is the goat. He is absolutely the goat.
He's the right size. He's my hero.
Yeah, no, he's a good guy. Hey, listen. So we've got some good folks who are chiming in the chat. Tim Golf 5 Tango Mike says he's gonna watch when he wakes up. I guess that's in a few hours. Scout 75, good to have you back. Stuart Hayes. Great field day with the Kitchener-Waterloo ARC. I wasn't too far away from Kitchener-Waterloo with my field day this year, Stuart. I was somewhere northwest of Kitchener on a farm having a good time.
Is that Kitchener? Is that Kitchener like Lord Kitchener, the hero of cartoon Kitchener?
I don't know. I don't know. But when we were talking before the stream started, I mentioned the Kitchener-Waterloo Amateur Radio Club Swap Shop, which has got to be the most popular online swap shop in Canada. And if you're a Canadian ham and you're unfamiliar with it, you got to get familiar with it because there's a lot of good deals that come up there from time.
Hey, do you think it'd be worth checking out from stateside?
Some Americans do use it, but now you get to deal with the border and you get to deal with these ridiculous,
Well, the exchange rate might be helpful, but I don't know what the know what the
you have to go through customs, right? So you got
well, I don't know. We have a trade agreement, don't we?
There is, but and sometimes shipping across the border, they want to if you go by a courier, they want to charge you a customs clearance fee, and that can be as much or more than just the shipping itself.
Yeah, I know. I ship to Canada all the time, and I see these poor people paying, god awful fees or something like that. Look, so if you're international and you don't really want to do that, they should just contact me directly.
You know what? And send them USPS because USPS doesn't do that to you.
Yes. Okay,
so that's a little bit of cross-border stuff. Okay, so what else we got? Nimrod Diaries. Thanking you for coming by. 7-3 from Michigan. Great to hear from you. All right, we got Tariq. Hey, Tariq. Nice to have you on board. Who else we got here? We got Chuck, KB8YIT. Hey, Chuck. Nice logo. I like that a lot. All right, we're just talking about some linked dipoles. Here's Scout 75. He's saying I've used. Look at this, Tim. You want to read that for us? By the way, we do have some visually impaired hams. I've heard from who follow it. So we should read out these comments as much as possible when we get a chance. So Tim, here's a bit of a point. You want to read it out and respond?
I'd be happy to. It says, I've used my new Link 28 and 40 dipole from me. The last few photos and a soda going to become my favorite field antenna. I'm glad to hear that. That's so cool.
So we were talking before we came on. I told Tim that I have one of his 40 meter Link dipoles that I bought from him many years ago, and it has really become my go-to. I mean, I have that, and I've got the Wolf River coil with it.
Yeah.
99% of the time, up goes my fiberglass pole. I put up the Link dipole, and it works wonderful.
The dipoles are so easy. So one of the reasons I built that choke is because I like to, I'll go all over the place. I'll go, from the high end. You take 40 meters, right? So you go from the high end to 40 meters at like 200, 225, somewhere around there, and then 10 minutes later, I want to work digital.
Yeah.
And with just a straight dipole, but with you can raise the ends and lower the ends and change the resonant frequency of the antenna.
Yeah.
The propagation changes a little bit, but it's it's neither here nor there, really.
Yeah.
Hey Tim, I got a question for you about that antenna. So I've seen some comments on it that seem to indicate, and I want to tell you, I've a practical experience. I had it in Algonquin Park in the backcountry. We canoed in. Set it up with I think it was my 817.
Are we talking about the dipole?
It was the Link dipole, the 4020 Link dipole.
Okay.
And you know what? I'm changing my mind on that. It was the FT 991.
Okay.
891. And what I found was I originally erected it as a 20 meter antenna. And what I tried to do was just leave it all assembled, but disconnect the bullet connectors that connect the 20 meter radiator to the 40 meter radiator, and then put it back up. The SWR was not good. It wasn't until I actually disconnected the 40 meter sections altogether that the SWR came down. How is that supposed to work? Like, is it
in theory, okay, you should just be able to disconnect and just leave it like you wanted to do, right? But there are times and there are certain situations and circumstances that you now have a piece of copper hanging off the end of the dipole, right? Which can serve to detune it a little bit. Mm-hmm. So if you're not having good results like that, just unhook it. And see, the way I use it is I don't do that. I put up the 20. I do what I want on 20, because to me 20 in the 20 during the afternoon into the gray line, 4DX, and then after that I just switch to 40, right? So I just put up the 20 and then I add the 40s later.
Okay. And I should also add in the extra context that the antenna was set up as an inverted V.
Yeah,
maybe if it's a flat top, you're going to see.
They're made to be used as flat as possible. And I know lots of people like to make that TP looking setup with the antennas like that. And really, it's supposed to be maybe like a gentle V, 100 degrees, maybe 110. Probably be optimal, not 90 or less. Which
and honestly, if it is like what I've done with your antennas, like to get 40 to tune a little better when I have it in a V, and it's not really like like it's more like a 90-degree V. I just fold it back a couple inches on each end and tune it right up. It's fine. Yep.
Okay, here's a little bit of clarification on something we were talking about earlier, geography oriented. So Kitchener, look at this, was renamed from Berlin. And that whole area in there was settled by German immigrants.
Sure.
All of the community names
shows Wisconsin
are German. Oh, yeah, that's true, isn't it? Okay.
Minnesota, the Germans are in Wisconsin, the Irish came down to Chicago, and the Polish. So yeah, it's still like that. It's like, but they changed it from Berlin to Kitchener, huh? Like Freedom Prize or something.
Yeah, maybe. Okay. Hey guys, I want to get into some of the stuff that we had prepared coming in. So let's do this now. I want to start off. I did a video back right after field day where I sat out in a rain-soaked tent and said, "Hey guys, I've got 4 portable radios. I don't think I should have this many. Which one do you think I should sell? And so the collection consisted of, and you've got a little stack on the right hand side there, which is my 897 on the bottom, the 891 on top of it, and on top of that, in its soft case, is the FT817. Next to them is my SGC 2020, which I bought in Dayton of this year. Haven't really had a chance to run it through the ringer, but I thought it would just be kind of interesting just to take a minute or two here. I received a lot of feedback on this, and that's exactly what I was looking for. Comments to help me make a decision on this, because I just felt like, I got too many. I should thin the herd. And by far, the one that people thought I should get rid of was the SGC 2020. And a lot of comments came back. It's like, company's out of business. If it goes south, it's a brick. Good thinking, right? It's now what it has going for it is that it's a 20-watt radio. It's solidly built. The one I have works fine. And I sort of went down the list here of all the attributes and the pros and the cons of each of them. So that the SGC, and now I think the second place, the one that the second most amount of people thought I should get rid of, I think it would surprise a lot of people, because I actually did the count. I did a little survey, and it was the 891. The 891 now, and maybe that's not so surprising, because people who have watched my channel largely are people who are fans of the 897 and the 817. Not to say there weren't lots of people saying keep the 891. There were, but when I did the count, that's just how it all broke down. And hands down, the one that I should keep, the one that received the fewest number of votes that I should get rid of, was the 817. So there you go. Chris, any thoughts on that?
I'm not surprised. Anyone who's watched our stream and certainly watched my channel knows that, like, the only radio I bring out in the field, it's because it's the only field radio I own, is the 817, and it's a rock solid radio, and for field operations, I think it's one of the best things that was ever made. I really do. Yeah.
Hey, Tim, how about you?
I would keep them all, but that's just me. I mean, why sell the SGC? I mean, it's the cheapest one.
It right? is. You
only paid a couple $100 for it, so I mean, why do that? And that's your Dayton souvenir, right?
It sure is.
Yeah. So, I just put them in nice little boxes and put them in the corner. No, they'll
After our talk with Gilles, the radio prepper, we'll put them in nice little tin boxes, cookie boxes, so they've got a Faraday cage around.
That's right.
Hey, look at this, guys. Christoph from Germany. Hey, well, good morning, Christoph, and thank you for joining us. It's nice to have you. Oh, I like this. Here's a good one. JD144. You can sell me that crappy 891 cheap if you like. Good stuff. All right, so that's that, guys. Let's move on to the next thing I've got here. So this summer, I was involved in some antenna stuff, and the first antenna, and I did a video on this one. The first antenna that I took a hard look at was this Comet toy box, the HFJ something or other, and the model number is escaping me right now. It sells for somewhere, and I'm thinking Canadian dollars, about 150 Canadian dollars. That's got to put it around $100 American. And it's this little telescopic whip with a bunch of taps. And anybody who may be familiar with the old Outbacker mobile antennas may remember that they used this little tapping wire to tap into the right place on the coil to make the antenna resonant on that band. So this antenna works exactly the same way, but it's a much smaller scale. It's got a couple of screw-on elements which have the coils in them, and this thing is actually going to tune up on, believe it or not, 160 meters, 80 meters, right on up through 10 meters. And the very top is a telescopic whip. Now, if you've got the coils uh, put together and you've got that telescopic whip, that's about a 5 foot tall antenna. Now, I walked into Radio World. Radio World is the premier amateur radio store in Canada. We're not of the size of the U.S. where we can have multiple chains competing with each other. And one of the guys in there, his name's Lincoln. Good guy, friendly guy, an 817 diehard. He got talking to me one day about this antenna, and it intrigued me enough to keep an eye open for one, and I found one in new condition on the KWARC swap shop that I was referring to earlier. And so I finally got a chance. I bought it about 6 months previous. Finally got a chance one hot summer day to drag it out to Provincial Park in a parking lot and set it up. And all of my suspicions about a very short HF antenna were confirmed. It is and behaves pretty much like you would expect a small vertical antenna to work. Now, I'm sure the propagation wasn't wonderful that day, but I also think that, unless the propagation is really good, unless we're at the top of a sunspot cycle, and we're not there yet, because we'd be seeing wall-to-wall signals on every band day in and day out and all into the night. Then I think this is more of a gimmick than anything else. And now that's coming from a single sideband operator. I understand if you're running CW or you're running digital modes, you're going to have better success with it than a single sideband operator would.
Sure.
And by the way, this antenna will handle up to 80 watts. I was only cranking 20 through it, which may have had something to do with it, but that's just my the way I do it when I'm out mobile. Anyway, there's one of my antenna experiments this summer. I was extremely fortunate to come across a Chameleon F-loop. This is the 2.0 version. They're now currently selling the 3.0 version. This is a used one, and it's in really good condition. And I've only had a chance to get out with it a couple times now. But let me tell you this. As a guy who has spent a lot of breath advising people not to buy low-to-the-ground compromise antennas, this antenna surprised me very pleasantly.
Yeah,
I was
good luck with that day.
It did very well. I was sitting in Southern Ontario. I made multiple contacts into Colorado stations during the Colorado QSO party. I followed that up with talk to a museum ship on the air down in Louisiana. It worked really well. So I've got more work to do with this. I'm planning on taking it up to Lake Superior with me next week and see how I do up there. Okay. I got it one of these times. I have to do a show based upon all the great comments that I get on my to my videos, comments, questions, all the rest of it. Hey, here's one from Steve, temporarily offline, his YouTube channel. Steve's got a really cool channel. You should go check it out. So he commented on the Chameleon. He said, not hearing, and here's one of the things that I found fascinating. While I was contacting stations in Colorado, there was another guy at the far end of the parking lot, Mike, VA3 MRB. He's a member of the Burlington Club up here and a friend of mine. And Mike was also on 20 meters. I was on 20. He was on 20. He was running from his car. And I never heard him. Never heard him. I was that close, 200 feet away, and never heard him. And so Steve from Temporarily Offline comes in and says, not hearing the other guy in the same park on the same band. The benefit of a high Q antenna. They are great for nulling out unwanted signals, but they require some effort to get that reward. Some people love them and some people don't. Yeah. Very, very astute comment there. Okay. I get a lot of questions, and this one came in this week. So here's a fellow from Belgium who asked me this. And guys, I'd like to ask you your take on this once I finish reading it here. You are certainly more experienced as I. That's why I would like to ask you the next question. I know the difference between conducting and non-conducting poles. He's talking about telescopic fiberglass poles here. I own one of both types. Mine are formerly fishing poles. You always use fiberglass poles, but my question is this really necessary? I know why you do so, but what if I use my conducting carbon fiber pole for my end-fed half-wave antenna when I put a piece of rope plus or minus 6 feet between the pole and the icer on the antenna? In my opinion, this will not be an issue to have any problems with the antenna pending horizontally or slopewise down. It's clear the antenna should not pending in any way parallel to the pole. I ask you this question because my carbon pole is 5 feet longer than my fiberglass pole, and I think I can prolong him with some more 6 feet. Until now, I always used the fiberglass pole, but because the carbon fiber pole is longer and easier to transport, 1.5 feet shorter collapsed, I will change to this conducting carbon fiber pole. Maybe I can later use the fiberglass pole for a vertical antenna. A win-win situation. 7-3 from ON4GED. Hey, Chris, do you have any thoughts on that one?
Okay, so Tim, you can confirm this, but my suspicion is that something that's conducting right adjacent to the antenna can detune it, perhaps, or certainly impact its pattern. That's my guts telling me on that. And it's funny. I mean, it wasn't until he got toward the end when he explained like it's 1.5 feet, a foot and a half shorter when it's collapsed. Okay, that makes a difference because a 5 foot difference the other way, I was like, that's not going to make a big difference. But all right, it's a lot lighter and it's only a foot and a half when you collapse it. If you take it out in the field, that's important because you got to figure out room to pack your stuff and whatever. So I don't know, Tim. For me, I'd rather have the antenna on things that are non-conductive as possible.
Well, if you can, I mean, if he's having a better time with the carbon fiber pole and he can make it work, it should be fine. I mean, I like his idea about the 6 foot lead on there.
Yeah,
that'll certainly do it. And typically, when you see that detuning, that conducting when you're closer to the ends.
Okay.
Of at least a dipole, and all an end-fed is an end-fed dipole, right? So if you're like right there on it as a sloper or something, I could see some trouble. But if he's okay with the fiberglass pole and he can make it work, you should do that.
You know what? I've had conversations with guys that have used metal poles and dipoles, and they haven't put any separation at all. And they've put the dipole feed point or the off-center fed feed point at the top of the metal pole, and it's worked for them.
One of my test rigs here is actually a military mast. It's the aluminum military mast.
Sure.
And I rigged it so it's like 28 feet, and then it's got a rotor and another antenna on top of it. But right at that connection point, I hung out a little jib with a pulley, right? So I can just take things up and down. So when I want to test dipoles or do anything like that, I've got one bag in a tree on the other side and one bag close to the house. I put them up there, and I don't have any problems with that. But again, it's right near the center, and it's offset a little bit, nothing like 6 feet, maybe a foot or two at the most. And I don't run into a lot of trouble.
Yeah. And
I've worked the world on that setup, so
those are good results right there. Okay, here's another one. Guys, when I did this copy, I didn't know it would turn out this. I'm going to read this. Actually, here's a comment in regard to which radio I should sell. I would sell them all. Get a KX3 instead of 817. Lower power consumption, lighter, smaller, supports receive of 2 frequencies at the same time. Great antenna tuner built in. 15 watts, no proprietary connectors to deal with, excellent manufacturer support, optional 2-meter band built in, and many more. Then I would get FT991A as the base portable radio, same receiver and software as the 891, but 144 and 430 added. That would cover all my portable mobile travel base needs and would probably cost no more than your existing 4 radios. Hey, Chris, what's your take on that one?
Oh, well, that's the KX. That is It's a beautiful radio. I mean, my fear of the KX. I mean, it always looks fragile to me. You know, I always look like it would break my heart if I dropped it. But I could be wrong. You know, I mean, it's a great radio, and a lot of people use them, and they use them in the field, right? What they're designed for. So, but I don't know, me, I'd just be afraid it would fall off a table, hit a rock, and that'd be the end of it. Where I think the 817, I would just, I got a little scratch on it, I put it back on the table, keep going. But now, as far as like the base/mobile idea, that's got some sizzle to it, because it's like, okay, you can have it set up in the house, and then like, hey, I'm going to go on a long trip, an extended trip. You could have some sort of a little bit of a harness set up in your vehicle, and just plug the radio in and go. That's not a bad idea. I kind of like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Tim, what do you think?
I think if you could fund the purchase of the KX2 with those radios and not have to add anything extra, because there are a lot of accessories available with that radio too, and I think you have to pay for a lot of that. Yeah. So even though when you see a KX2, it's $1,100, but then you add this.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be fine, but then you have no backup. You would realize that, right? I mean,
that's true.
Good points.
So I could support it. It's not out of the question at all.
All right. Okay. Here's one from Rod Murray. And this was in response to my 5 watts versus 1500 watts CQ Worldwide SSB DX 2022 video I did last fall. Rewatching this and came across your pointers about better adjustment of the AF gain with no IPO on, or was it IPO off? What about the attenuator, on or off? Can you go over how you set yours up for easier listening, better quality audio, and more contacts? I have the FT818, no filter. Should I add one? ? And an ATU 10 auto tuner, as well as a manual MFJ 1610 tuner. Chris, I want to throw this one over to you. How would you respond to that?
I would respond to that I think the best thing to do, especially when you're contesting, or not so much contest, but you're in a contest and you're doing a long operating session, is turn the RF gain down and turn the audio up. Right? You don't copy static, you copy audio. So I've done that with the 817 in the field. I always keep the RF. The RF gain is not wide open on it. I keep it back on. Here at home with the FTDX 3000, I leave the IPO on, but I also have the RF gain is definitely turned back down. Go more for the audio than if you bring the RF up if the signal's really weak. But it's fatigue on the ears when you got all that static in between words and syllables. It's just too much. So now, as far as a filter for the 817, I think it comes with doesn't it come with a standard that's like a 2.5 or 3 kilohertz?
2.4 kilohertz.
Yeah. Now I added for mine, which is really hard to find. I found actually on Fleabay of all places, I found the CW filter for that. I put it in, and it's great. It works great, but they're really, really, really hard to find. But as far as I think that's the only filter I think you could add to it. If you're going to operate CW, sure. But anyway, my general rule of thumb for me is I keep the RF gain back down a little bit, so I'm not getting all that noise in my ear when I'm operating.
Hey, Tim, do you have any take on that one?
I usually, some of the stations I'm chasing are really way down there, so I got to crank things up, or I'm just not going to hear them. So I'm willing to put up a little pain to be able to copy. Right. But I've got the digital filter in my 817, so it's the I forget. There was a guy in Texas who would install them for you.
Is that right? The Soda Beams filter, or was it the BHI?
No, the Soda Beams is the one you push the button, right?
Right.
Well, there's a BHI that you also push the button for, and that's more of a noise filter rather than a bandwidth filter.
Yeah, this one's actually built in, and you go into the menu and you turn filter on and off. Huh. This was years ago. There was a guy in Texas. You sent him the radio, he put it in, and you got the radio back in like a week doing it. And that's what I find that's helpful for. And it does both CW and sideband. So
nice.
I use it I don't use it for CW, but I do use it for sideband, and it helps.
Now, when you say you're chasing the weak ones, is that typically on the higher HF bands?
No, it's usually at night.
Oh, okay.
It's usually at night, so it's like 40 maybe,
Okay.
80 sometimes.
All right.
We could do
So
a whole show. We could do a whole show on 80-meter portable.
yeah, yeah, no joke on that one.
But yeah, usually 40, 40, 20, and 17. 17 is my favorite, as you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I just want to make a before I want to give my 2 cents on this one. I have something to add here, but Scout 75 has just thrown up a couple of comments, and I flashed them on the screen there. But Scout 75 has done a video on the topic of using a metal mast with an antenna. Scout 75, if you want to put the link to your video in the chat, then others can go take a look at it when our stream is done, of course. And just a greeting to Wade, VA3NCA. Good evening. There he is going on 2 times speed. All right, we'll have to fool him and everybody just start talking really slow.
That's right.
Um, okay, so attenuation. So here's the deal, right? You're working with an old radio, an FT817. You're in a crowded band. There's no such thing as a weak signal when you're working CQ worldwide, and the bands are open, unless you're on one of the higher bands. And 40 is typically a money band for me. And I mean, it's wall to wall. So the first thing I want to do, and Chris alluded to it, is turn back the RF gain, turn up the volume to about the 2/3 mark, the AF gain. But now I want to go in and I want to make, if you think about the way the 817 was engineered, a lot of the engineers figured, okay, people are going to take this thing out into the field and probably use it with a crappy antenna. So we're going to make this thing really, really hypersensitive. And that's what they did. And so what you have to do in a situation where you've got all these loud signals is you've got to try to reduce the din from all those loud signals. And the first way you do that is by making sure that the attenuator is on. So you attenuate everything coming through so that now only those stations that are coming through the strongest are still audible. And you're hearing some of the others too. But this is where you get into the second one. So Yaesu has this feature, and Yaesu loves to do things differently, right, than all the others. They don't have a preamp in their radios. They've got this feature they call intercept point optimization. And when you turn they also known as IPO, when you turn the IPO on, it's turning off the preamp. So you don't need the preamp. You don't need the you don't need the preamp, and you need the attenuation on. So you turn on the IPO, you turn on the attenuation. And by the way, this works with the 857, the 897, and a number of other rigs as well. And it doesn't even have to be Yaesu. Just replace the term IPO with preamp and turn the darn stuff off. If you've got wall-to-wall signals and you're trying to get through to that one guy, one of the best ways of reducing the interference from the neighboring stations is to go through this. Now that you've done that, well, now you can get into things like IF shift or passband tuning if you've got those capabilities.
Right.
Even narrow filters. But as far as Rod's filter question goes, a couple of years ago, I went and bought myself, because Chris, you alluded to it. These filters have become scarce as hen's teeth.
Yeah.
Nobody's making them anymore.
Yeah.
Collins used to make them. International Radio used to make them. Yaesu used to sell them. They don't anymore. International Radio was a good supplier of specialty bandwidths. From Yaesu, you could get a 500 kilohertz. I think you could get a 300 kilohertz CW filter from, and you could get a 1.8 kilohertz. I actually have in a drawer here. I've got a 2.9 kilohertz that I plucked from an 897, and that's really nice for base station use when you've got an external speaker hooked up. It produces beautiful audio. Not wonderful, not something you ever use in a contest situation with crowded bands because the bandwidth is just too wide. I went a couple of years ago and I bought a 2000, it was the 2.0 kilohertz filter. I thought, you know what? I couldn't get the 1.8. The 1.8s were sold out by that point. International Radio isn't making them anymore, isn't getting them anymore. The smallest they could get was a 2. I tried it in my 817. Now, here's the interesting thing, all right? Depending upon the radio, these crystals will work in one of two different ways. Number one is that they will reduce the received bandwidth down or up to whatever the width of the filter is. So in this case, 2 kilohertz. It will limit 2 kilohertz. What I found on receive in crowded condition is that the difference was minimal between just the standard ceramic filter. I mean, I could barely hear it, even in a busy, crowded band. So I would say at $150 a pop, not worth it.
Not worth it.
But,
Okay.
but here's the but. These filters, at least in the 817, the 857, the 897 series, they also work on transmit. So when you've got a 5-watt radio, and rather than having it transmit a 2.4 kilohertz bandwidth, now you're taking all your RF power and cranking it out into a smaller bandwidth, that could potentially make a difference on the receiving end. So there you go. I still don't think it's worth $150 for something like that, but your mileage may vary.
Yeah.
But certainly, Chris, you made a point about CW or digital modes. The narrow filters, for 500 kilohertz, 300 kilohertz. Yeah, you can even get like 250 hertz. I'm sorry. Those ones can make a significant difference.
Oh yeah, it definitely does. Yeah.
Okay, let's move along here. Field day. We just want to take it over to my field day for a minute there. Actually, just before we do that, let's say hi to Tony from Venezuela. Hey, Tony, thanks very much for coming by. YV5 RAB, using all POTA activations, a wire inverted V linked dipole from 10 to 40 meters. It's a great antenna. Yeah, they really are, aren't they, Tim?
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Here is Tony's got a follow-up comment. 857D, the FT891 battery cable antenna, simple and efficient. Yeah, especially when you're using those antennas, you don't need a tuner. It's very simple. And thank you, Tony. All right. I just want to make a couple of quick notes about my field day before we get over to Chris's, because I think Chris's model was really intriguing. And I want Chris to spend some time walking us through that. So number one, every field day, I want to learn something. And I've been doing field day for years on my own, schlepping stuff and setting up. And every year I walk away a little bit wiser. I knew the forecast called for rain. I knew it called for thunder showers. But I wanted to test my new shelter. So my new shelter has 4 screen walls. That's it on the left there. It doesn't have any kind of a roll down curtain to keep water out, but I wanted to see how it would perform, and how it performed in driving rain is not well. if the criteria is not getting wet inside,
right?
It did get wet inside. I had a tarp to throw over things. I actually had to bail into my other tent at one point when the rain was coming down so hard. So that was lesson number 1 for me from my field day. My lesson number 2, here is a shot from the south end of the field day site, looking up towards the north end. There's a creek on the right-hand side here. Absolutely gorgeous location. Oh, by the way, absolutely mosquito infested. I was so glad I had that screen shelter, because it would have been miserable trying to operate outside on a picnic table. My goal of this shot is to give you a lay of the land here. So I ended up putting Tim's G5RV, the 40 through 10 G5RV, and it was aligned up somewhere on a diagonal over my 2 tents there, going from a tree that you can see to the backside of the tents off over to the left. And then it's a fairly small antenna. I think it's a 51-foot antenna, if I'm not mistaken, Tim.
Something like that. That's right.
And the antenna worked really well. I mean, it worked fabulously. I running QRP, I had more than 100 contacts over the course of the contest. the field emergency preparedness exercise. Excuse me. But here is an absolute prime example of where my telescopic fiberglass pole PVC mount would have been the better choice. I've got a complete straight line shot for more than the length of a football field there. I could have used that. I would have been able to get the antenna up higher, and I would have been able to make it flatter rather than in quite the inverted V configuration. Now, I did pretty good on the angle. I think the angle was somewhere around, 100 and no, let me see, 90, maybe about 110 degrees or so. But I could have made it a lot flatter using that. So next time, and sites like this are rare, but next time I'm given that kind of real estate, I'll definitely be using my PVC pole mount to get the feed point up higher and get the antenna flattened out more. Okay, now Chris, it's time. Please tell us a bit about your unique field day experience. Kind of walk us through what you did and how you did it and all the rest of it, please.
All right. Well, field day for me this year was I kind of like set out each time I've done field day. I took the Julian model, like have a mission, have a plan, and what is it you want to try to accomplish. So this year, I've been dabbling with POTA on and off. I think like most portable operators have through the years, and I happened to look and saw that I had a whopping 8 parks activated. I was like, oh boy, there I am. I'm a big activator. So, but I'm realizing that the first award level is 10. I said, well, all right, I'm going to try to do like what they call it. I think they call it in POTA terms, they call it a rove, right? So you operate multiple parks in one day. So the plan was to go out to at least two parks, maybe 3 on field day, and operate as a mobile station. So, and the rules were that if the radio was mounted in a vehicle and got its power off the vehicle, then it was considered a mobile radio shack. You could use any antenna you wanted, but it had to be like if the radio's in a car or in a vehicle and it was off the battery in the vehicle, it was considered mobile. Okay, fine. So in my truck, I have a ICOM 7100, and that's just mounted on the control panels on the dash. It's all wired in. And actually, I have 2 ham sticks on the back. And I also have an antenna switch like behind the driver's seat. And there's a third position. So the third position is really like when I'm doing something like this, where I'm parked somewhere, run the coax outside, and hook myself up to an antenna. So the first park you see was People's Park. In fact, I think the next picture shows my what I had set up. Yeah, so I had, first of all, like Tracy had, it was raining here the whole time. So it was overcast, raining. In fact, this first park I was in, I got poured on, setting everything up. So you see the antenna to the left in the picture is the Wolf River Coil vertical. And then right behind that, you'll see my little attempt at Tracy's PVC fiberglass pole mount. I set that up. And on that, I had Tim's 20, 40 meter link dipole. That was my antenna setup. And I brought everything into the truck, and then I operated. So when field day started, that park, I activated, I think it took me about a half hour, 45 minutes to get like, what I would do is get like 12 or 13, 14 contacts. And I said, okay, park's activated. And what I would do is I just took the antenna, the vertical, I collapsed the vertical. It's got the MFJ, the big whip, the 17-foot whip on it. Collapsed that, didn't even take the legs off the tripod, rolled up the radials, threw them in the bed of the truck, and then I took the dipole down and went off to the next park. What happened here, like, again, this is where you learn, some things when you're in the field, like, having 2 is, if you have 2, it means you have 1. If you have 1, you have none. My fiberglass pole, the base of it broke. So like it wouldn't stay up. It was that was out of the picture the rest of the day. So the rest of the day I had to operate with just the vertical. So this is the first park in the rain, radials on the ground, and everything worked fine. About, like I said, 45 minutes, maybe an hour, activated that park, threw everything in the truck, and off I went. So I think the next picture brings me, so here's my next park. Now you notice the sky changed, so the sun started to come out. So I came into this park, never been to this park before. Drove in and found a spot, and I think the next picture will show you that, a quick shot of where I was there. So that was it. That's all I had. The vertical setup on this little sandy kind of lot of land. That park I activated literally within 15 minutes.
Nice.
I forget. I think I was on 40, but I was just, one call. I was just tuning around one call after. Actually, well, because it's field day, you can't spot yourself, like you can on normal POTA activation. So you're just operating like another field day station. But I just kept tuning around and banged out, easily 15 contact, literally 15, 20 minutes, done. So packed everything up and drove off to the third park, which is, there we go. So it's Horse Guard Park. This is an interesting park. It's trails only. So like the parking area, if you show, so I don't know if I have the parking area in the next picture. Okay. What you see the road off to the left, right? There's about 15 to 20 feet. And just to the right, you can probably just see the beginning of where my truck was parked. The parking lot could support maybe 5 cars. That's it. So there I was. Luckily, nobody else was there today because it was so crummy out. So I parked there. The radials lit. That fence is the end of the park. The radials just stayed inside the boundaries of the park, so I met the POTA regulations. Now that park was later on in the afternoon, and going into about 7, 8 o'clock at night, and that was tough activating that. It took me a while to get those last couple of contacts in, but I did it. So for me, the big deal out of field day was I did this crazy rove idea. It started at 2 o'clock Eastern time, and by 8 o'clock I was spent. but again, I learned a lot. I mean, on like always have an extra antenna. I always have a spare of whatever. Of course, my spare radio was a 7100 sitting in my truck, which I didn't need. So. And going from one park to, like, you got to map yourself out, make sure you're not circling back or anything. You have that all planned out. But it was great. And of course, the operating skills you learn operating field day QRP, because I used the, actually, no, and for this, I used the 7100. I did not use the 817. I'm sorry. I used the 7100 for the whole thing. So I wasn't operating QRP. And even then, at the end of the day, it was still a bit of a workout to get those last couple of contacts. So. Yeah.
So next year, Chris, what have you started thinking about what you'll do next year?
Well, so that'll bring us to our next adventure. So this is where when I started off earlier saying that Tracy has ruined my life. You hang around Tracy enough, and you get this idea that, hey, it looks like it'd be a lot of fun going out in the field with a tent, staying overnight, camping somewhere. So my wife and I had a week vacation. Like, we had some time. Like, well, what do you want to do? I said, let's do something different. I said, why don't we go camping? And I said, so we found a park. We've never done this before. Never booked a park, never went through all that. And we had to go out to get all the supplies, the little burner stove and all the other stuff we needed. And so here's our campsite at this park we went to. And I was still setting up. So in the back, you see our tent, the little 4-person tent, which we have now upgraded to an 8-person tent because there's no room for the 2 of us in there. You see my little grill, little table set up. We had a 10x10 pop-up, and I'm thankful that I put down extra lines because it got really windy that night, and that thing would have been found somewhere on the other side of the campground. You see the 2 pieces of PVC there. The one standing up is a carrier I made to carry my fiberglass pole and my vertical with the coil attached to it and all that. That gets carried in that larger PVC standing up, and the one laying down is my take on Tracy's little fiberglass pole stand sort of thing. So that was our campsite right there. That was the whole thing. The next picture shows, for this, I operated the 817, and it was a POTA. So I spotted myself on POTA. And it was interesting. We were there for two nights. So it was like, 3 days. So the 2 of the days, I had the radio on, and I actually activated that park 2 days, 2 adjacent, both days we were there. So I wasn't count for anything much extra on POTA, but that's what you see there. That is my QRP setup. It's the 817, a little MFJ speaker. I have the I guess the Soda Beams processor, right? The mic, the audio processor for the mic. I have one of those, and I keep my iPad there. I don't log on it yet. I'm faster, honestly, doing it, pen and paper, and when I go home, I just put it in. So I just keep that little app running there to give me an idea of what time it is, and I can also check weather because we did have some weather go through the park, and I had to shut down for a while. So, but that was that. And the next picture shows this will be Tim's antenna on a different fiberglass pole that I got to replace the other one. You can see it's really bent over. So next week we're going out again, and I'm going to use this same pole, but I'm going to take a different. I don't think I'm going to go quite up as high on the pole, so I get a little more meat, for the pole, so it can stand up a little straighter.
So
it worked.
That's what I envisioned for the fellow from Belgium, right?
Right.
And he's got his carbon fiber mast,
right?
And he's got his pole, bent over, maybe not that bent over, but bent over a little bit,
right?
So it doesn't interfere with the, or doesn't couple with the antenna at all.
Right. No, yeah, it was actually, the funny thing is, bent over like that, it was a flatter angle, so it wasn't as bad. So I see my Uncle Jim signed on, so we have to say hello to my Uncle Jim.
Hey, Uncle Jim. Nice to have you on board.
Yeah. So a week from tonight, we're going to be going out to another campground, which conveniently is another Poda Park here in Connecticut. So, and the plan is to try to activate a week from tomorrow, activate another park. So, but again, this whole camping thing, it's all Tracy's fault. Blaming you for all of it.
Well, you're going back for a second take at it, so it can't all be my fault.
With a bigger
that old saying, fool me once, shame on you.
We got a bigger tent and a little screen house to go with it, and yeah.
The right gear makes all the difference.
Yeah. I think
really does.
We'll be fine. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
We also got cots, so we're not sleeping on like.
So you got a can of beans too. You're gonna cook over the fire.
Oh, listen, I had a grill going with dogs and burgers, and we had bacon and eggs one more. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I want to ask you guys, you would know better than I just want to go back to this one slide here. In Canada, I go to a provincial park, and sometimes I grouse about the privacy because there might be a little shrub or something between some campsites. Right. Here, there's nothing.
There's nothing. You're absolutely right. There's nothing.
Like, is that typical for American parks?
No. This park's down near a beach, so the campground was nothing but these field loops, the little loops you drive around, and the campsites are on these flat fields. In fact, that building in the back is actually where the bathrooms were.
Okay.
Now, this picture was taken. The sites on each side of us weren't occupied. The last night we were there. You see that little RV behind us, right? Another guy came in with a small trailer that was actually between us, and then we had a family like to the right side of the picture here that came in with a tent and a little like screen tent, stuff like that. And so we were literally on top of each other. So the campground we're going to next week is not like that. It's more like what you're accustomed to, Tracy. It's like there's trees between the lots. It's not.
Fantastic. Well, phew, that's a relief because one of these days I'd like to get down there and do some camping. Hey, N0LSD, Mountain House Mac Chili. I cannot tell you the number of times I've had that cooked on my jet boil. Absolutely. Yes, that's always a crowd pleaser. Here we go. Peter, VE3WYD. Tim, had fun with your antennas this summer. Shout out to you. Opened up the HF bands for me, exclamation marks. Thank you. P.S. Like how you sign all the orders. Well, there it is. So now, do we actually tell people how you sign the orders, or do we make them order an antenna first to find out?
Oh, no. They order first.
All right.
No question. No question.
Good stuff. All right. What else do we have going on here?
So back to your park, whether it's crowded or not. So the closest park to me is K1000, which is Illinois Beach State Park, and it's actually huge. And I had a back and forth with someone, a guy in Deerfield who was looking for a park to activate. I said, "Well, have you ever been up here?" And he's like, "Well, no, but you get to learn the parks, and there are like secret ways in and out." So the easiest way to do K1000 is to go up to like the 17th Street. This doesn't mean anything to anybody unless they know the area, right? You take the 17th Street entrance on by the Moose Lodge, and you come up on this little area, and it's right on the lake. So you have the parking lot, and then you've got like this grassland, this dunes, and then you're actually right there on the beach. And the waves are huge, and there's hardly anybody ever there. So in theory, on paper at least, you could work from the parking lot if you wanted to, or you could take your stuff and set up a little thing. What I like to do is I like to like get out and go to super light and just find a spot and work from there, preferably like on the water.
Yeah.
But I've seen maybe half a dozen people. There are little trails you can walk and do all kinds of stuff there too. hunt
Well,
for fossils.
this particular spot in this campground was we did walk one morning. We took a walk out to there's a little like beach on Long Island Sound, a little boardwalk there to walk along, and that was about maybe a quarter mile away because at night you could hear the surf. So, so I mean, it's a nice park, but and honestly, I chose that as our like first campground experience because it's flat, you know, and it's just
Sure.
easy in, easy out. You know, I don't want to have to be like having to learn a lot of things, you know, on the first time out. So this next campground we're going to, I checked out a couple of YouTube videos that reviewed it and showed all the different sites. And
Yeah.
it actually, the site we have, which is late in the season, that's why we got it. It's literally, you got the road, you back into your site. And at the end of the site is this big pond that the lake is that the campground is on. So we'll wake up in the morning, look out, and we're looking right out over the water. So
nice.
There are park secrets which would make an excellent blog for somebody if they're not already doing it.
There's a couple that did it for Connecticut. They went to just about every campgrounds in Connecticut, and what they do in their videos, like you see how they do, they set their things up and all that. But then they take the second half of every video and they walk around the whole campground and show you every site.
Yeah. Now, to contrast that, I was at Rock Creek State Park. It's out in Rockford. This was a couple of years ago. And yeah, you pull in and you have a camper and you've got all that stuff and you're in a slot next to somebody.
Right.
And they're all filled up and it's no fun at all.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Hey guys, let's move this along a little bit because we have some questions from Tim's mailbag. All right, Tim, do you want to read the question and get into it?
Quick question. What internal components are you using for the QRP and fed half wave? I was watching a video on YouTube about differences between the capacitor. Some are better than others, I guess. Yes, I don't remember the gentleman's name who did a video on capacitors in end-fed half waves, and he's got a nice little analysis on there about bandwidth and noise and all the other stuff like that. And I don't use the eBay no names. I actually use the TDK CC45 series 101K capacitor. So there is a difference. They cost more, of course, but I think they're worth it. And the eBay no name ones, I mean, I think they're coming out of China. You'd have to wait like 2 weeks or something to get them, and they come by Asia Post or something like that. And the TDKs, you can pick those up on DigiKey or Mauser, and they're here in a couple of days. But it's $2 for a capacitor as opposed to 50 cents or whatever. Even for the money, the TDKs actually perform a lot better.
Sure.
I wish is the name of the video down there?
Evil Lair Electronics is the channel name.
Yeah, that's a real good video. That's worth I think 10 minutes or whatever, 20 minutes that he spends talking about that.
Okay.
If that kind of thing interests you for antenna purposes.
Yeah, cool. Okay. All right, next one. Here you go. Read this one out, Tim.
Hope you're doing well. I have my chance. 2 questions. Linked infed half wave. Do I have to decouple the link in order to operate at 10, 15, and 20? Yeah. So this goes back to the conversation we were having before about leaving it linked or leaving it not. And depending on the circumstances, which are kind of all important, but the linked end fed half wave was actually meant to run that way. So you can leave the whole thing chained up, but just connect and disconnect the links for the bands that you just want to use. Second question, I'm getting good signal reports on 40 meters. They're quite acute. It's great. However, I can't say the same in reverse. Some of the stations saying I am 5955 sometimes. Okay, so end-fed half waves are great antennas, and everything comes at a price, right? So the ease of deployment and lighter packing and taking it down, all of that ease comes at a price. They're not the greatest receiving antennas in the world. So if you want to pay a little bit of higher cost in terms of pain, you could put up a dipole, which I always recommend. If you could put up a dipole, you should put up a dipole, right? But they're not, and infeds can be noisy too. So if you have a choke or something that you want to use usually on the radio side rather than the antenna side, that will help with that too.
I had some other thoughts when I was reading this, putting this together for you.
Shoot.
The first one is that when we get into, so it's one thing to get those reports back. Those reports back are saying, hey, your station's doing a good job. That's beautiful. But then we start to think about S meters. And all S meters are not created equal.
That's true.
And so you've got some other factors to consider there. The design of the radio. Okay, what does S9 mean on that particular band for that particular model of radio? Also, do we have an attenuator engaged? Is there something else at play settings wise in the radio that might be affecting? Like, for example, in some radios, you turn the RF gain down and it affects the meter
Sure.
reading. So there's a number of different things that could factor in to him not getting the same meter reading.
That's absolutely true, and I'm glad you brought that up because, again, I look at the question differently. I look at it from the antenna perspective, and the little tweaks and stuff on the radio are not necessarily the things that I would pay attention to first.
I would also add to that, like a lot of times when somebody gives you like, oh, you're 5 and 9.
Everybody's 5 and 9.
You sound great, right? And he didn't even look at the meter.
Yeah. No, absolutely right, Chris. That's an excellent point.
But there's
also we know guys will run 100 watts even if they only need 5, right? Because it's they paid for a 100-watt radio, so I'm just going to crank it up.
Why do you run 100 watts? Because I can. Yes.
Exactly. But there's also, they've probably got their preamps turned on. Yeah. And they don't know, right? And it's the guys say, oh, everybody's coming in at 5.9. I'm getting great signal. I'm hearing stations in from all over. So there could be that.
You got to remember, like, see, the thing with 5 and 9, right? It comes from RST, right? Readability, strength, and tone, right? So the strength part is kind of like it's on a scale of 1 to 9, right? So and 5 is like readability. So like somebody say 5 and 3. It's like
it's 5.9 plus.
Yeah, well, 5.9 plus is like that's when you kind of say, yeah, you're really booming in. I'm looking at the bending my meter. But
20 over, 15 over,
right.
We've all heard it.
Or if you're on 2 meter, it's full quieting,
Yeah, that's right.
Correct. So like most of the time, it's like RS, readability and strength. Okay, your readability is 5, rock solid. Your strength is 9, perfect. But if a guy's really booming in, I'll glance down the meter and say, oh yeah, you're like 20 over.
Hey, Scout 75, I'm with you. I have taken to doing the same thing on POTA activations. When I'm trying to record and looking up all the time at the meter, it's just like, okay, I can tell from what I'm listening whether he's an S7 or an S5 or S9.
He's exactly right. And when I do it, I've got 3. I've got a 5.9, I've got a 5.5, and a 5.1. Okay, and that's.
Okay, I love this one. N0LSD chiming in. This is why I prefer digital modes. The numbers don't lie.
Right.
If you could only decode them. What? How come I'm not 5.9? It's like you're giving me a negative.
Yeah. So here's the thing too. And this is I find this a fundamental principle of life, right? And this is not just radios. It's anything. And anytime you're using things that read out or measure or test equipment or any kind of instrumentation, those things generally have to be calibrated, right? And different manufacturers are going to calibrate their stuff in different ways. That's why I love everybody with a rig expert running around, measuring Philip was good for that. He'd start measuring SWRs of like, cedar trees and things like that. And all of those things are based on a standard calibrated somewhere. So you just have to keep that in mind when you're measuring something.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right.
I'll tell you a funny story. This will only take a second, I promise. Right. So it's about 10 years ago. I had a conversation with a friend of mine at work, and I was the manufacturing guy, right? So I automatically understand all of these things. This is a marketing or salesperson I'm talking to. So anytime there's a question about something, we'll just go ask him because he knows all this stuff, right? So having a conversation, he goes, "Oh, did you hear that there was this physics lab in Italy, and they measured particles that went faster than the speed of light, right?" And I said, "No." And they instantly got mad at me, right? He was like, "Oh, how do you know?" I was like, "No." Okay, I said, "I'll bet you $10 somebody didn't calibrate their equipment, because that's usually the thing that happens." So about 6 months later, it comes out that they didn't calibrate their stuff, and this was all wrong. And the guy who ran the lab ended up getting fired because they announced all this stuff. So it's one of those little life lessons you got to remember when you hear something like that. First question is, okay, how they doing that?
Critical listening.
Yeah.
Okay, Tim, here's another one for you. Want to read this out for us?
Everyone hopes to find me well. I love that.
Yeah.
We're worried
Yeah,
about you.
which is awesome. I have an issue and wondering if you might have a recommendation. Okay, this fellow, yes. Okay. So he purchased several antennas, not only for me. I had to clear this up, right? He's got my stuff, he's got other stuff. He's got several antennas that work fine for years, and then all of a sudden, his SWR goes nuts. Like, okay, so he's changed his coax and he's got the same thing. I was considering purchasing one of yours, but I don't want to spend more money for the same results. Your thoughts? Okay. So when problem solving like this, he switched out antennas, he switched out his coax. There's only one thing left, right? Which probably means that there's an issue with the transceiver, which I hated to have to tell him. It's probably likely the radio. And I think if I remember this correctly, and we got done digging into what his problem may be or whatever, it turns out he's running digital modes at like 80 watts. Okay, so I don't. That's not. Listen, if you want to run FT8 at 80 watts, bless you. Okay, but things like this can happen when you do that. There's a potential that you could, you could smoke the antenna. You could actually do some damage to the finals on the radio. There's lots of things that can happen. And you have to be real careful, because if you find yourself on digital modes and you're just sitting there CQing on a certain portion of the waterfall and you've tuned to that and your ALC is 0 and you're good, that's fine. But it's happened to me a number of times where I see a station that I want to answer, and my setting is that I jump to that frequency to answer. I'm transmit on his frequency rather than the one that I'm at. If I don't lock that down, then I'm transmitting on, plus 2,000 on the waterfall as opposed to where I was back down 900, right? And the ALC settings, the drive settings for that are going to be completely different. So you can do that by accident too. That's not something that just be careful. If you're going to run that much power to digital, keep an eye on it.
Yeah. Or buy yourself an amplifier and run it below its rated spec, right?
Yeah, you can do that too. But really, I mean, honestly, the most power I've ever thrown into even FT8, right, has been 25 watts. I mean, I think I did like Ascension Island, maybe 30 for Antarctica or something like that, on 30 meters. It's just like, that's all that's needed, Yes, running full duty cycle modes on a radio like that will smoke the radio. It's not meant to do that. Yes, that's very true.
Okay, Tim, next up.
Okay, wow. I know this is cheating, but I like that. I know this is cheating, but I told them there's no cheating. There's only playing to win. Okay, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. I know this is cheating, as I should be doing the experience myself. Do you know how well this QRP link to InFed halfway performs on 40 and 80 when hung horizontally at a low height with a small counterpoise attached to the spare ring terminal? Did I send you my answers?
Let's just take a look here.
This one's normally I can see them.
No, you didn't. Not for this one.
Okay, all right. So hung horizontally at a low height, you're going to get an NVIS configuration. Now, the particular NFED half wave that I make isn't necessarily made for working 80 meters, but it ends up being like a quarter wave on 80 or something like that, and you can tune it. It'll tune to 80 with under the right circumstances, so it'll work. It just won't be a very good 80 meter antenna, but with a digital signal at 5 watts or something like that, you'll find yourself being spotted out there on it. With a small counterpoise attached to the spare ring terminal. I don't run a counterpoise. I use the ground spike and let the coax do the heavy lifting, because I've got a fairly long run of coax. So as far as a small counterpoise, that's something that people have to play with. I mean, that's part of the fun.
That's true.
I hate to pick on Philip, but he's great for that. He'll run a counterpoise every time. And I think the last time I talked to him about a counterpoise, I got an 80-foot counterpoise and it's running great. It's like, well, that's cool.
Well, I remember you had said also your NFED, they'd like to be a little more vertical, right? You
got to get them off the ground.
Yeah.
At least a foot or two off of the ground. I think that's pretty much the case with all NFEDs.
Yeah, typically I think the recommended height is 3 feet. Get it up about 3 feet to a meter off the ground.
Tough to do in a portable situation, though.
Not that
Sometimes.
tough. If you're on a sloper, it's not that tough.
I've never had any problem with the ground anchor, and it's 18 inches or so, a foot maybe off the ground.
Yeah.
Works
Well,
just fine.
that's the bottom line. If it's
If you can get
working for you at that height,
If you can get it
you know,
higher,
we can drive ourselves crazy chasing ideals,
yeah. Well,
right?
that's somebody in the chat said something about perfect is the enemy of good or something like that.
Oh, I missed that one. Yeah, it's
I mean,
absolutely correct.
don't let 1.6 SWR ruin your good time or something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
which is my philosophy as well.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Here we go, Tim.
Okay, I just received this internet. Thank you. I have a couple of questions. I'm kind of new to this game. That's okay.
Then this is a QRP linked, portable linked end fed.
But yeah, this is all
4020 1510.
stuff. I'm guessing this will run on 20 and add the second wire for 40, and is the ground spike necessary? KS. Oh, what is that? KSW. What? I can't see.
K4SWL. This would be Thomas.
Yeah, I know. I'm familiar with him. I can't see the picture though.
Oh no, that's just the thumbnail for N0LSD.
Oh, okay. They're about 3 feet off the ground. Yeah, that's a good height. So the question: this linked end fed has two pieces of wire. You've got a primary, and then you've got an attachment. So I made it right for the guy who wants to, for the Chris Bauer who wants to run into the park, activate it for 30 minutes, and then move on to the next park. Right. So he comes in on 20. He throws his bag up in the tree. He runs the line. Poof! He's got a 20-meter sloper that works on 10 as well. So he can make his 10 contacts and then move on. Right. So now the fellow who wants to work 40 meters can do exactly the same thing. He just plugs that second piece of wire into the first one, and you run it as a 40. So on 40, you get 40, 20, 15, and 10. With the 20-meter section, you get 20 meters and 10.
Right.
And is the ground spike necessary? No, not at all. The ground spike is convenience.
Yeah.
Counterpoise, coax, however you want to experiment and work with it, it'll do that.
Nice.
What?
Okay, next one.
What do I recommend for the FT891D? Tracy's Chameleon Loop.
I've got the power compensator on it, which means I can run up to 60 watts on it.
So when you're done with all the little fiddly bits and the tripod and the little tweaker tuner thing,
you know what?
You
know how long it took me to set up when I did my video? Less than 10 minutes, and I'm slow. It was remarkable.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Do you remember that gesture I gave you earlier?
Yeah, that was kind of rude, but we don't have to go into that here.
What antenna do you recommend for the 891D? If you're going to ask me an open end, what antenna I recommend, the answer will always be a dipole. If you can.
I agree. Yeah. And I agree.
And the Xiegu G90. Again, dipole. I want an antenna that covers as many bands as possible. I have a lot of open land. Then a 80 meter or 40 meter OCF dipole would probably be the best option in that case. Especially for the because that tuner is just a wonderful little tuner. So you'll have all bands open to you. Now N2 MAK did a video not too long ago on the OCF dipoles, and he was able to do 7 bands, I think with it. But there was some trick in his ICOM. He could go in and he could set the tuner to be wider banded. I guess it was something I didn't know about the ICOM radios that you could do that with. And you get 17, 15, all of those. When I set mine up with the 450D, I get all those normally. So I don't know if there was something special with the setup where he only had it up so high, or the angles were off, or something like that.
That's interesting.
If you got time to play with it, yeah, it'll do it. So that would be my recommendation for that.
It's a good one. I like it.
With a lot of open land.
Yeah.
I just passed my extra and picked up a Yaesu FTDX10. That's awesome. New to HOA. Our home is in an HOA and most likely moving within a year till use of portable straightforward. 6-foot wooden fence diagonally. Okay, so so this is the guy who wanted to run his from the second floor down. So what I recommended to him was a little end fed right? If he's got 60 feet or so, he could do a 40-meter end fed from the window, and the tuner will do it. So rather than go up, he would go down, which is fine. I've seen people run them like that.
Oh yeah, I've run one at my home QTH for years that way.
Sure. How should I ground or counterpoise? Well, from the second floor window, the ground spike may be tough. So maybe the grounding system in his house wiring would work. No, I'm kidding. Does counterpoise? You could just run a counterpoise straight down.
I was just hanging out the window. Yeah,
totally. Some of the icons have an emergency mode for their tuner. Yes, that's what he was talking about.
I had no idea. This is brand new information.
I didn't either until I saw his video. Because you know how sometimes the internal EACs they give you 3 to 1 and they can be finicky from time to time.
And that's it.
And yeah. So apparently the ICOM has this capability which cuts your wattage down to 50 watts. I think it's like goes from 100 watts to 50 watts or something like that, but you get a wider range, which is awesome.
That is awesome. Jeez. Okay. Got that one figured out?
I think so.
No, the counterpoise. You were just going to finish up on the counterpoise, Tim.
His was an interesting situation because I'd never been asked that before. I want to run mine from, my second floor balcony or something like that. I get a lot of questions.
I will tell you this. So having run end-fed antennas from a TV tower down on a slope to a back corner of the yard, I've done it in multiple homes, and for many years I never used a counterpoise. Now, mind you, that was a resonant end fed. If you're using something more like a random wire end fed, then I'm thinking you have to you have to do one of a couple different things here. You can either attach a counterpoise and just drop it straight down the side of the house, or use a piece of coax off the feed point. I don't know, call it 15, 20 feet, and
exactly.
put a choke on the end of it, and then the rest of it to your rig.
Exactly, and that's that question comes up a lot too. Do I need a counterpoise? And my response back to this kinds of questions is, well, how much coax are you running?
Right.
Yeah.
If you're running, 25 feet, 30 feet of coax, the answer is probably not. You can put one on there. It's probably not doing much for you,
though. Wade, VA3NCA, how long was the feed line and did you choke?
Right.
Yeah. And those are the questions. Right? Those are great questions.
I think he's asking you.
You're talking about my installation.
Yeah.
So, but because I used a resonant end fed, there's no need for a counterpoise. So I didn't use one, and I didn't use a choke either. And I probably had about 35, 40 feet.
Coax. And that's why.
That's why.
Yeah.
That's why. Yeah. Because your coax becomes your counterpoise. There's always a counterpoise. Somewhere.
Yeah, and I didn't have, in a situation like that, I know that a choke is with a short piece of coax is recommended as a counterpoise, but I never had any issues in my previous installations with any kind of RFI. So that meant I didn't have to worry about it. If RFI becomes an issue, then by all means throw a line isolator or two into them.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So I think this is actually the second half of the question of the guy who was having problems with his transceiver.
Oh, okay.
We got around to, okay, I run Digi mostly. Okay, how much power are you putting through there? 85 watts. Okay. Yeah, that's too much.
Okay, what else we got here? Here we go. Speaking of chokes.
Would I put a choke between? Okay, so this is the G5RV like you had, right?
And I had a similar issue on field day where I was a dummy and I put the choke in the wrong place.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you asked me about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then I remembered how a G5RV works.
Yes.
And it's like, yeah, there's only one place for it.
Yes. So for this particular antenna, the choke or line isolator or whatever you want to use would go at the base before the ladder line. So it would be radio, coax, isolator, then ladder line. Go to the rest of the antenna.
Yeah, the ladder
and the reason
the ladder is your matching unit.
Yeah.
The ladder line is part of the antenna,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
so you don't want to put a choke in the middle of your antenna. You want to put it where the antenna ends.
Yes.
And that's where, and since the ladder line is part of the antenna, it's
Yeah.
radiating. Yeah, you don't want to put the choke up top or it won't radiate.
Yeah, your 40-meter G5RV, which would an antenna like that would normally be 60 odd feet long.
Yeah.
Well, to get it down to 51 because some of that lifting is being done by the ladder line.
Right.
So you can get it down there. Now you want to concentrate all that energy in that system.
Yeah.
So the isolator would go right at the base of the feed point of the ladder line.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I just passed my general test Thursday evening and brought home my new used Yaesu 757 jack. So you just got after my own heart.
Yeah, what a beautiful looking old rig, huh?
Yeah, right.
Now need an attic antenna for HF. Could condor restrictions in place in the attic not huge, but trying to get as much length of the dipole leg. Could you please guide me to the 80/6 or 40/6? He's talking about OCS at this point. And I don't think they're going to get an 80/6 OCF in an attic. It's just not doable.
Right.
So in this case, I would have recommended the 40 for him. But in all honesty, I don't like recommending a lot of wire antennas for attic installations. They usually don't work out. It's about like a 50-50 success rate. So if you're under HOA restrictions and you've got problems, you want to do something in your attic, you might want to think about that loop antenna.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yes, agreed.
Which is not going to be the greatest experience for a new ham who just passed his general.
But they do have, look, it's going to cost a boatload of cash.
Right? It didn't for you, which was I thought was
no,
cool.
It didn't for me. That was an exception. I got a hell of a deal on the used market for mine.
That's true.
But to buy one of those new, it's around $500 US.
Yeah, that's a barrier. Yeah.
They also have, now here's the key part. If you are really stuck, you buy that, and Chameleon sells a remote tuner option. So that it's literally this little box that you put on your desk, and it's got up and down controls on it, and it's got a little motor that goes onto the matching unit,
which is very
tuning unit.
Very cool.
And that costs about $350 if I'm correct. So now you're into $850, but you're on the air.
You know what? I would. It's funny in this case. What I would think about, because years ago we lived in California. We lived in an HOA, and California. My yard was the size of someone's driveway. I mean, it really wasn't a yard, right? And this was long before the days of the buddy poles and all that stuff, right? Now, what I did there was, I'm lucky I didn't get caught. I actually ran a dipole off the house and just kind of hit it, and you really couldn't see it. But nowadays, if I were in that situation, what's wrong with setting up a Wolf River coil vertical, throwing the radios on the ground, and just putting the antenna out when you're operating, and when you're done, you go out and fold the antenna and pull it back in the house.
Which is bringing to my next point too, and I know it's probably something you can edit this out for the regular version if you want. But MFJ used to make this little apartment antenna. You know what I'm talking about? That it has like a
clamps on the window and it goes out the window
thing like that. So if you want to just get on the air, okay. Yeah. As far as the loop goes,
work. Years ago, I was in an apartment and I got one. Barker and Williamson made it back in the day, and I had one of those. It clamped onto the window, and you had a little went outside with a coil, and then you had a counterpoise wire you rolled out, right?
Right.
It worked. It wasn't great, but it's a serious compromise antenna, but it worked. See, the thing with an HOA is like if it's portable, you go out, set it up, and then when you're done with it, you bring it back. No one's going to complain.
And a friend of mine, as far as the loop goes too. I mean, if the guy buys that system, he's just spent more for his antenna than he did for his radio, probably. So
now here's
the Wolf River coil is not really that expensive. Like when by the time you get a tripod and you put a good sized whip on it, you can maybe it's a couple $100, but again, you're on the air.
Yeah.
One other thing, guys. Sorry, I sorry to interrupt, Tim.
No, it's okay.
But if you'll think back to the stream we did back in the early part of this year with Peter, VE3NNP, and his attic antenna.
I thought about him too when I was
Go
doing
back and tell your guy to go back and take a look at that stream, because hey, if Peter can do something like that successfully, and he's running a DX station out of a townhouse, then it's possible.
It is. A friend of mine's got lives in Florida in an HOA, and he ran a vertical, an end-fed, right? Ran a wire up into a tree in his front yard, and the coax he tucked into the little expansion joint in the concrete in his driveway. He tucked it into that, brought it in the house. I went to his house, could not find the antenna.
Awesome.
See, I was stuck on the words. I just passed my general, and you
Yeah,
could
it's
do
true.
all
That's a good point.
do
Yeah,
all
it's a good
those
point.
things, like that. But
Yeah.
climbing around in the attic in the middle of summer trying to fix your antenna is not.
It's
gonna
not.
do
Time out. Who is going to have more enthusiasm and be more willing to do something like that than somebody who's full of pea and vinegar, who's just got their license? He may be a perfect candidate for that. You and the rest of us,
listen,
we've been there and done that. Like
I guess I'm old because I can't think of a bigger turnoff than I've just passed my general. I got this cool new radio. And now I got to do what? To go? No, you know what? Get the little balcony thing, stick that up, or find a cheap loop, or do something like that. Get on the air, make some contacts, learn to love it, and then say, now I'm ready to go into the attic in August and hang up an antenna. That antenna, there's some drawings too that kind of go this way, and you spin it in turn into like a little Moxon or something, and you're gonna have to fool with it like that because I hope your roof is not metal. I hope that they're not using the iron trusses and stuff like that.
Well, I hope there's no alarm system wiring up there, because I used to live in a townhouse that had that stuff, and I encountered some issues. Let's put it that way. Hey, we got a couple of late joiners. Gary from London, VE3XDM. Thanks for joining us, Gary. We also got Don Trainer.
We'll have to tease Tim because somebody's able to stay awake during the.
Well, that's London, Ontario, actually. So Tim's off the hook at this point.
I didn't see the call.
Okay. Here we go. Hey, I don't trust antennas in attics. Fire hazard.
You know what? That's an excellent point.
I think it is.
Yeah, that is an excellent point.
Hey, the Ontario Beach Club's got a good one there too.
My other advice for people too is just wrap your connectors always.
Yeah.
Always.
Yep.
Tracy, that Ontario CB Club's got a great comment there too.
Oh, I missed it. Sorry, the thing I went on. It's next. Hey, if I may, indoor antennas, even though they resonate good in a band, you won't get out much. I live in an apartment. I use a window antenna with a manual antenna tuner. That works better than an indoor antenna. Great. Yeah, absolutely, Nick. I met Nick at local flea market.
Got to get it out.
Listen, I am happy to sell anybody an antenna that they really want, and I am happy to walk them through. And you've seen I've got floor plans and drawings and all of those different things that I've done for people to try and figure out how they want to do this or whatever. But the bottom line is, unless that really, I don't know how much the little MFJ thing goes for these days, but stick that out the window. You might and get on the air and learn to really want it.
Get a ham stick, in some kind of a bracket, right? Even a magnet mount sitting on a balcony, on a metal table or something.
A ham stick will work. You could and MFJ's got that mount where you can put two ham sticks on it. You got a dipole.
Mag mount and cookie sheet works just fine. Yeah,
it's not great, but you'll get out.
Hey, we got John, VE5 JHN from Saskatchewan. Hey, John, we'll never kick you out for being late. All right, what's our next one, Tim? Here we go.
What is the length of the links? Can I bend or turn a couple of feet without losing too much? Okay, so that is an 80-meter OCF, which I think is 80-40, I think, somewhere 44 feet, and 80 feet on the other side for the lengths. That question, though, I remember was a guy looking at a 40 meter, which is for the Wyndham that you have is 25 and 41, and it's 44 and 22 feet for the regular one. So the regular 40 meter OCF is 40 feet and 20 feet ish, right? And yes, you can bend the links, you can droop them, you can turn them, What you want to do though is this is kind of like the attic installation. One guy had an attic installation which came out from a center point, probably 10 or 15 feet, and then he had the long run of like 30 feet or whatever the golden ratio is for that, right? But you've got these antenna elements that are hanging out there in parallel that are kind of close together, which is less desirable than something that you could hang in the middle and then go diagonally with and then droop them down.
Yeah.
Or turn them, turn them in opposite directions. So have
Right.
your diagonal and then one go this way and then one go the other way. That's how you would do it.
Yeah,
Hey, Tim,
for
what's
sure.
your thoughts on an OCF that might be in a bit of a V?
These are fine for OCS. There's two ways to do that. There is, in fact, there's a diagram on one of the listings that I've got. I found somebody who actually made a diagram of different OCF hanging methods, and you've got he does it sometimes as a sloper, but the interesting thing is you've got the mechanically superior way of hanging it, which is from the middle and the center connector.
Right.
There's also an electrically superior way, which is maybe 25% up the way of the long leg and then having the feed point down off to the side with the short leg coming down
Right.
in a V.
Yeah.
That would be my answer. So, but B's are fine. The same rules kind of apply. You don't want to go, I mean, you don't want
Right.
to do it in a 90, but if you've got a nice, gently 110 sloping V, perfect. It's fine.
Hey, Don's got another idea here, and
He loaded up
he says
one.
he
Yeah.
loaded up a gutter.
Yeah.
Now, sorry, Dan, and Alpha Antenna, I think, sells a
Yep.
gutter antenna kit.
Yes, they do.
So that's something that anybody in a pinch. So just one other piece of advice on that sort of, you're really inhibited with antennas.
Well,
Get
okay.
into,
Well,
get into digital modes, right? Whether it's CW or FT8 or something else, so you don't have to run a ton of power, and a weak signal does well.
hang on. That's a heck of a pinch, though. Just so you know, you can't
Go on.
You can't go loading up gutters. It's not gonna
Well,
really
no, not all gutters are metal, so there's that.
do it. It can be done.
Yeah.
It can be done, but you won't be getting the. Oh, Chris doesn't have his award wall up, but I was going to say you're not going to win too many awards trying to work stage. There you go.
There they are.
Loading up gutters.
Well, we all know the right answer in terms of, hey, I'm having trouble getting a good antenna at home. We all know the right answer to this is to get out, go out into the field, set up where you can set up a proper antenna.
Right. Set up a tent. Go out there and live in give
Some
the
of us,
nature.
Some of us though have a little trouble. Have a little trouble getting out. I went through. Listen, I've done all of these things. Okay, I've bought. I spent thousands of dollars on antennas, and I have steel gutters here at the house, and I tried loading up the gutter once, and doing all kinds of. And I'm the guy who had the balcony, version of the thing, and I've done all of this stuff, and I'm telling you, I finally ended up with the aluminum military mast. I got one in the back with a stick-in tower mount, the
Nice.
swing,
Yeah.
the swinging thing, and I've got really two big oak and maple trees that I can go into. My neighbors are cool, so I have stuff hanging in their trees. I've got another one up the chimney, and it's I'm going across the street over to the power lines. I mean, all kinds of stuff.
Very nice. Hey, listen, I wanted to just highlight this comment here. So Brian is from my home radio club, the Burlington Amateur Radio Club here in Ontario. He had a good field day with Bark, and they did a great job. They got up to Rattlesnake Point, which is where I used to do my field days before they took it over. Now I have to go distance because I can't be operating in the same park as somebody else when I do my stuff. One of these days I'll do it with them, and we'll have some fun that way. But old habits die hard. So thanks for joining, Brian. Tim, I think we might have another one in here. Oh, and this is a diagram that you had sent along. I didn't know.
Yeah, those are attics
to address this.
Those are just different types of. People say, "Here's what my attic looked like. It's 15 by 20 or 15 by 30 or something like that." And I want to put a wire antenna in the attic. So these are just different ideas. So the one there on the left where you have that peaked roof, right? The 3D version. is probably, I mean, if you could do, if this is what you got to do, and you're comfortable doing it, that's probably the best. But it assumes a lot of things, like your metal's not, your roof's not metal. You've got, you wrap your connections. You don't have, metal all over the place up there. Do it, and people, again, it's 50-50. People have successfully done that. I had a guy who he had a second floor office, and he ran a 20 meter or a 40 meter OCF around 3/4 of his thing, and was having a ball with it, And other people have done these things, and they just can't seem to get those things to work.
Yeah.
I do, again, if it's a I got no other way to do this kind of thing.
Yeah. Now, fair enough. Hey, John from Saskatchewan says, I have such a high noise floor here at my apartment that I bought an RV and have it park at a friend's farm. That's where my shack is. Sounds pretty nice. Unless it's February and it's minus 40 in Saskatchewan. And
Well, there you go.
you get that.
They have RVs have heaters.
Well, that's true. I keep thinking it's just a fancy tent on wheels, but I know I'm wrong. Oh, look at this. Hey, guys. Hi, I am from India. Well, what's your call sign? You need to let us know. Thank you very much for joining us. It's fantastic. I think that we may have our first Indian login
I've never worked India, so get on the
All
radio.
right.
I have not worked in India either. I've not.
Look, I think he needs to get on right now. Let's work him.
I haven't done India. Those are on my bucket list.
Yeah, that would be very cool.
That is awesome.
All right. Yeah. All right. And it's just more. Okay. Good morning, all friends. Fantastic. Oh, he's a student. Okay. So hopefully you're going to get your license at some point. And
then we'll
yeah, absolutely. Look forward to that contact. Okay, Tim.
I have two. Did I really send you all this stuff?
Wow. Yeah, you did.
Jesus. Hurt. I have two antennas on order with you through the tech prep. I was reading through the description the other day. You couldn't locate what the max power today. Side note question. Have you ever put a tuner on the tech prepper NCOM link dipole to pull out any more bands? I'm not even sure this is possible. This is all new to me. Just reading some stuff online. Forgive me if it's an ignorant question. It's not. It's not an ignorant question. He's got a 40 meter, or if you set up the 40 meter section, you're going to get 15 on the harmonics. And you can take those ratios from there. So I think if the 20, you can get your half wave on 20 or a full wave on 10, right? So with the tuner, you might have some luck there. 40 will get you 15. What else? 80 will get you 40, right? And I'm trying to think if there's a 60. If you do anything with 60, I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
So this is all back to harmonics and dipoles. So that third harmonic will resonate for you, which I think is what I told them.
Yeah.
So you can have fun with those things.
Yep. Oh, hey, take a look here. We've got N0LSD with a comment. I worked India from Kuwait when I lived there. Really fun. I bet you get some great DX.
Oh, yeah.
Not look what we would consider DX. Okay. Gentlemen, it has been a run. We are 1 hour and 43 minutes or something like that into this one. So this qualifies probably for the longest one we've ever done, but a lot of interesting stuff.
Holy cow.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. So thank you to everybody who has joined us for this stream. We really appreciate your being with us and your comments, and it's wonderful to get together.
We should ask,
go ahead, Tim.
We should ask Scout 75 if he wants to come on. It sounds like he's having a lot of fun out there.
You know what? Let's get him booked for a future one. Yeah, absolutely.
I know he's got a lot of the
that would be fun.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, Scout 75, be warned. Keep an eye in your inbox over the next few months, and we'll set something up. Okay, hey, look, we'll just grab a couple more comments as on our way out here. Rod says he went with a 41-foot end-fed random wire, 9-to-1, shaped like an L in the attic, and I can do 80 down to 6 with it. Wow.
I think one of the drawings I gave to you was for him.
Oh, okay.
Because I have a file in my computer of an attic drawing that we did, and it's called Rodmer. So Rodmer, I would imagine that could be him. But that would have been 2 years ago.
Okay.
At least. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess he's making some contacts with it.
I hope so.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Cool.
It's just addicts is, and he's what, and if this is the case, he's one of the guys. It was, like I said, it's a 50-50 shot. You know.
Yeah. Right. Okay. N0LSD 73. Thanks for joining us. What else we got here? Wade, VA3NCA. Thank you, Wade, 73 to you. Scout 75. He's in. All right. Good stuff. Yeah, it may take me a little while. Don't feel bad. I sometimes have other stuff on the go, and stuff doesn't get out quite when it should, but definitely I'll reach out. Okay, Gary. Hey, Gary, thanks so much. Wonderful to have you aboard. And Rod, yep. Okay, 2 years back. There you go, Tim.
I'm not
Hey,
losing. All right.
No, absolutely not yet. Not yet. Chris, final thoughts.
Had a great time. Always good to talk about what we're up to, and to blame you for ruining our lives. So,
Telling you, a campfire and a can of beans. That's just
Shore lunch. You got to catch your fish. Do the red. You guys get familiar with an old TV personality called Red Fisher, that going back into the 60s and 70s at a fishing show.
No,
He had to popularize something called shore lunch. So they would go out on a boat, really low budget fishing show. They go out on a boat, catch a bunch of fish, bring it back to shore, and then they get this beautiful, like whatever they've been catching on the fry pan, and then they break out a can of beans, baked beans, and then they pour that on the fire. They get that going, and that's shore lunch. All right, guys. All right. So Chris, Kilo 2, Charlie Juliet Bravo, 4.3K subscribers.
yeah,
On the way to 5,000.
Yep.
If you haven't got yourself subscribed to Chris's channel, please go do so. Tim, final thoughts from you.
dinner time. I'm gonna go have some shore lunch.
Yeah, look at this. Hey, Rod knows who Red Fisher is. Poetry book. I can only imagine. This guy was not Mr. Sophisticated.
And Mike shows up just as we're signing off too. He's another one. Who's got style too.
Good stuff. Okay, Tim. Anything? Sorry.
No, goodbye. No.
Okay. Hey, listen, and don't forget Tim N9SAB antennas on eBay. Check out the store. There's some great wire antenna products there, and Tim makes high quality stuff. You put up an N9SAB antenna, you will make contact.
On Twitter, we're on Twitter, right? You have a Twitter account now. You should follow Tracy on Twitter.
Yep. Outdoors on the Air on Twitter.
Outdoors on the Air on Twitter, sure.
It's called X now. It's not Twitter. It's X.
It'll always be Twitter. Chris is on Twitter, right? What's the?
Oh, it's just my name. It's just Chris Bauer on Twitter. I think
it's at Chris Bauer.
I think. I forget what I call it on there. I got to go look.
If you look up my follows or Tracy's follows, I know I'm following you.
Yeah, you'll find me in there. Yeah.
Okay. And we like and subscribe to the channels. Yes. Okay.
All right. Thanks for that. Everybody have a wonderful, enjoy the rest of your day, your evening. If you're watching this recording afterwards, thanks so much. Looking forward to the next one. Please keep your comments coming, your emails, send them to Chris, send them to Tim, send them to myself. And we really do appreciate everything that you folks send our way. 7-3, good night.
Good night.